This week, we talked to a woman who has been biking in Chicago for 30 years and went from owning a car to living an amazing life without one. Take a listen. Well, thank you so much for joining me on Chicagoans Who Bike.
Thank you.
So first of all, is this your bike, and can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yes, this is my bike. It's a Linus bike. It's a mixty. It's 8 speeds. It's lightweight, and I have a basket here to carry all my goods, and it gets me where I want to go.
Absolutely. And how long have you been biking, and what got you into it?
So I grew up in a very typical Chicago suburb. I would say it's very car-oriented, where bikes were considered just toys for kids and maybe young teenagers until they got their driver's license and grew up. But my parents are immigrants from Germany, and I spent summers in Germany with them. And my grandmother, who was in her 60s and 70s, would ride her bike into the center of town to do her volunteer work. And that really made a deep impression on me, to see a grown-up adult riding a bike for transportation. So that was kind of my earliest impressions, I guess. And then in my 20s, in the 1990s, I lived in Beijing, China, for a couple years. And that was the last halcyon days of bike as king in Beijing. And everyone rode bikes, and I did too. And that's where I really first got a taste of how convenient it is to ride a bike for transportation.
And what do you use your bike for? Your bike looks very practical. You have a basket. So I imagine a little bit of everything, right? What does that look like?
I mean, I ride my bike for transportation. It's my main mode of transportation. I live happily car-free here in Chicago now, and I ride it to get groceries. I ride it to commute into the office in the Loop, if I don't ride a divvy. And to appointments, and to meet friends for dinner, and just everywhere.
And what do you like about biking in Chicago? I mean, you talked a little bit about it, but can you tell me more about what makes it special to be out on a bike?
Well, yeah, I mean, biking is just really convenient, and you can get on your bike and you get in the bike lane. You don't have to worry about traffic jams, and there's always parking wherever you want to go. And so it's super convenient, and obviously it's really good for your wallet. The cost of owning and maintaining a bike, especially kind of a workhorse like this one, is negligible compared to that of a car. Everything from obviously the cost of the vehicle and parking and gas and all that stuff, insurance. Mm-hmm. And then, also it's just good for my health, both my physical health. Just a little bit of biking every day really adds up, as well as mental health.
I think a lot of times people have this misconception that people who bike don't own a car or have never owned a car. But we were talking earlier that you have owned a car. Can you talk a little bit about that transition, or what that felt like, or even just that cost factor as someone who has been in both of those worlds?
Yeah. Yes, we had a car and paid for parking, off-site for decades, and spent a lot of money doing that, even though the car was an old car and we didn't have payments and so forth. But just in general, we didn't drive it that much. We only drove it when it was truly inconvenient due to really bad weather conditions or inconvenient on public transit, that kind of thing. So the transition for me to go from car light basically to car free has been super, super easy.
And what's something you dislike about biking in Chicago? Are there things that you feel like could be better?
The bike grid is coming together slowly but surely. I've seen a lot of changes over the 30 years that I've been biking here in Chicago, especially the last 15 years, I would say. And that includes, even 15 years ago, there was just the Lakefront Trail and, painted bike lanes here on the north side on Lincoln Avenue and Milwaukee, and that's it. But, when the Kinsey protected bike lane went in and the Dearborn protected bike lane went in, and all the changes and improvements since then, it's been about almost 15 years, it adds up. It's so incremental that it's hard to see the progress. But when you look at it longer term, it's been really good. However, the pace is still too slow, and the grid is not yet connected. We're getting there, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, and when you talk about a bike grid, for people who might not be familiar, what do you mean by that? Why is connectivity so important to biking?
Yeah, we need a good bike grid because we need connected routes where anyone can go from one part of it to another without any scary sections. Because someone who's not used to biking, they will not take that route.
Yeah.
And so we need continuous routes that connect up with each other, and that's happening slowly but surely.
Yeah, and like a good example might be like getting from Lincoln Park to downtown. Like you need a continuous route. If it's, oh, you have a bike lane that gets you, I don't know, a few blocks south, that's great, but it's not gonna get you to work.
Right.
What advice would you give to someone who's new to riding in the city, who's maybe just getting started biking, is maybe a little bit more nervous? What kind of tips might you have for them?
Well, one thing I would say is don't overthink it. Don't think that you need to be in fantastic shape. Don't think you need to know how to change a flat. I mean, I've had one flat tire in 30 years of biking here, and there's always a bike shop nearby. That's the beauty of urban biking, right? And don't feel like you need special clothing or anything. Just you can just get on your bike and ride. Having said that, I think people, of course, the gateway drug for decades has been the Lakefront Trail. Go on the Lakefront Trail, take neighborhood streets, wherever you live in the city, to get there if you are within reasonable distance. Or, try to go on off-street trails first and take little side streets to get there, like the river trails and the 606 Bloomingdale Trail. And as you get more comfortable, then work your way up to bike lanes and that sort of thing.
I know, especially in Lincoln Park, I grew up in Lincoln Park, so I'm very, very familiar with the area. There can often be opposition to bike projects, maybe talking about traffic, maybe talking about parking. What would you say to people who, maybe they predominantly drive, and when they hear about these bike projects, they're really opposed? Like, is there anything that you would say to those people, or you say when those conversations happen?
I have had success with that exact situation with non-bicyclist drivers who complained to me about having bicyclists all around them. And I've said, well, would you rather, this is when I had a car, I said, would you rather that I be driving to work and be driving, right in front of you at the stop sign or the red light? And they're like, oh, no. It's like, okay, well, you should also be advocating for more people to get out of their cars, even if you never are going to ride a bike. It makes more room for everyone because it's an inherently more efficient way of transportation in the city.
Absolutely. As someone who's been in Chicago for a long time, what are some improvements you've seen to your biking experience, notable infrastructure that you're like, wow, this is really cool. This is something that I'd like to see more of?
Well, at a bigger level, just the number of bicyclists out there is exponentially more. I mean, 30 years ago when I started bicycling, it truly was like the kamikaze bike messengers in the loop, and sort of wannabe Lance Armstrongs, on their way to the Lakefront Trail, and then the occasional person like me, very rare. But now, in the last 15 years, especially with the introduction of the Divvy program, I think it's really, and the fact that more and more young people are coming into the city and they maybe have more of a biking, open to bicycling and so forth. There has just been a huge growth of bicyclists. And that helps everyone. The more bicyclists out there, safety in numbers. It makes us more visible, and it makes everyone more aware that we are a real contingent of stakeholders who, have a stake in the design of the streets. For infrastructure specifically, like I said, back even 15 years ago, there was like nothing at all in the loop, and now we have, Randolph protected bike lane, Washington protected bike lane. Of course, Dearborn, I already mentioned, Clinton, and those are all, game changers in terms of having people comfortable riding a bike in an urban environment, as well as the off-street trails like the 606 and Bloomingdale Trail is new, and that's such a valuable piece of infrastructure for people as transportation and recreation, of course. And I just really wish every single ward of the city, every neighborhood could have something like that. Because I think it would be the gateway drug for a lot of people to adopt non-driving ways of getting around.
What's one of your favorite experiences or memories that you've had biking around? Is there like a special story that kind of sits in your heart of a really fun time you were biking?
Honestly, every time I get on my bike, I just, unless it's pouring rain or something, which then I'm usually not biking. But like most of the time when I get on my bike to go somewhere, I am just happy to be able to do that in here in Chicago, and it just fills me with a real sense of joy and freedom.
Cool. Well, then those are all the questions I have. Thank you so much for joining me on Chicagoans Who Bike.
Thank you, Victor.
Thanks for watching that interview. Subscribe to see more conversations with Chicagoans biking around their city, dropping every other week.